So this is our last session. We'll look at some more material about feelings and do a meditation on that. We'll see if there's any final questions. Then the next slide has a bit more information about the connection between feelings and delusions or mental afflictions. Okay, so again, the delusions are the main cause of our suffering, our problems. Although that's something we need to investigate, and it may take us time to be convinced of that and to see the truth of that in our experience. But this is very much a part of the Buddha's teachings, that delusions, afflictions cause suffering. And so there's a connection between feelings and delusions. So in ordinary beings, meaning beings who are not enlightened and don't have don't see the true nature of things, just ordinary beings. So pleasant feelings can increase our attachment. And so we can look at our own experience of that and try to notice that happening, although it's subtle and very fast, almost instant. But yeah, what happens is when there's a pleasant feeling, like something we see, like when you're in a shopping mall, a supermarket, right? And your eyes fall upon some object that's attractive, then and there's a pleasant feeling with regard to that, then very quickly there can be attachment, wanting that object. And so this is how companies make money. They make the items very attractive, so that people will be attracted to them and want them, desire them, and then they'll buy them and they'll make money. And so in a similar way, with things we hear, like sounds that we hear, especially music, certain types of music, if we have a pleasant feeling for that music, then our mind reacts with attachment. I want more of that. I want to keep listening to that music. And the same with smell, pleasant odors, or taste, pleasant tastes. And with our body, tactile sensations, physical sensations, if it's something pleasant, then there is attachment, wanting more of that. So then attachment, a lot of people have trouble recognizing what's wrong with attachment. And many people think, well, life would be empty, life would be meaningless if we didn't have attachment. We need attachment to connect with people and things that make us happy. And so they tend to think if there wasn't any attachment, there would be no joy, no happiness, no pleasure, which isn't completely true, but I'll talk more about that later. But anyway, from the Buddhist point of view, attachment is one of the main causes that keeps us in a situation of suffering and prevents us from progressing on the spiritual path. So if we cultivate mindfulness, if we train our mind to have mindfulness, then we're more likely to notice this happening. We notice a pleasant feeling and attachment coming up. And if we want to work on attachment, we want to overcome attachment, we can stop that from happening. Or even if the attachment does arise, we can say, no, I don't need that. I already have 10 of those. I don't need another one. Yeah. Or that isn't healthy food. If I buy that, it's not good for my health. So we'll be able to stop ourselves from following this process of wanting, desiring. And also, we might also just sort of do some contemplation about what attachment is all about. And one thing to check is we tend to think that the happiness or the pleasure comes from the object. We tend to think that makes me happy, that makes me feel good. So that's something to check, to question if that is really true. And one way to check that is if it's true, if that object really is the source of happiness, is the thing that makes me happy, then that should be true all the time. Should always make you happy. So if you buy that and you bring it home and you keep it with you day after day, month after month, year after year, you should continue having the same kind of happiness, the same kind of pleasure from it. If it's really from the object, yeah? But what happens usually? We buy something, we get something, and maybe in the beginning we're happy, we enjoy it, but how long does that last? Don't we get bored with the things that we buy after a while? There's no more happiness with them. Then we want something else, something new. Have you noticed that? The things that used to make you happy, used to give you pleasure, now it's like no longer the case. Yeah? So that's something we can investigate for ourselves. And so another way of investigating this is if that object was really, truly a source of happiness and pleasure, then everybody else should also find happiness with it. Everyone else would enjoy it as well. Everyone else would feel the same way that we do. So is that true? Yeah? So you might be able to recognize that the things that you like, other people don't. And they may even find them unattractive, unpleasant. Yeah? So then that kind of throws into question our concepts that this object makes me happy. I need this object in order to be happy. And that's what underlies attachment. I have to have this object in order to be happy. But if we check if that's really true, then we might recognize there's some faults to that line of reasoning. But those are other ideas related to this. I know this one person who he had attachment to a certain kind of sweet. In America, we have what's called lifesavers, these little sweets that are like in the shape of a donut. and they have different flavors. Anyway, it's just some kind of candy, some kind of sweet with different flavors. So he was really attached to one particular type.
Now we are not discussing about the kind of sweets.
Yeah, you probably have something
like that, but I don't remember.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just some kind of candy that children like, but sometimes adults like them as well. So he was really attached to one particular flavor of that type of candy. And he wanted to overcome his attachment. So he just ate a lot. You know, like he overdid it. He ate so many that he got sick of them. And then after that, he just, I can't eat that anymore. So that kind of shows that if that particular food item was really the cause of happiness, then the more you eat it, the more happy you should have, the more pleasure you should have. But that isn't the case. You can get sick of it. You can eat yourself to sickness with it. But we don't have to try that unless you want to. But the point is, you know, just to question our concept that this object is the cause of my happiness, and I want this object, I need this object in order to be happy. So that's questionable. And then the second type of feeling, unpleasant feelings, these can increase our aversion or hatred. So again, we can look at our experiences of that. So when we encounter an object that we feel unpleasant about, something we see, some sound that we hear, some odor or taste or bodily sensation, or something on the mental level, some thought that we have. And if there's an unpleasant feeling, our initial reaction is feeling unpleasant, then this usually, in ordinary beings, this usually leads to aversion, to dislike. I don't like that. And that can grow and become stronger and become anger, hatred, and even get to the, for some people it gets to the point where they want to destroy that object. Yeah, and so then it leads to violence, to murder or acts of terrorism, really extreme negative actions. So again, what our mind is saying is we think that object is what makes me unhappy. My unhappiness, my negative feelings is coming from that object. And so I have to destroy it, or I have to get away from it in order to not suffer. But again, if that was true, if it was the object itself that was the cause of your unpleasant feelings, then everyone else should have the same experience. Everyone else would feel unpleasant with that object. But is that true? Or are there people who feel neutral, neither good nor bad? And there may even be people who feel pleasant, who find that object pleasing, a source of happiness. So if you can see that, then it's questionable if it's really the object that you have to destroy or get away from, or it's more about the mind. So, for example, food, there's certain types of food that some people just love and almost like they can't live without. For example, hot chilies.
Hot cheese?
Hot chili, like chili sauce, really hot chili sauce. Yeah, I have met people who the hotter the better. You know, like they really go to lengths, even ordering it from the other side of the world, paying a lot of money to get the hottest chili sauce that's possible. And they eat it and they love it. They're so happy. And for me, and I'm sure for many other people as well, it's suffering. You know, I don't even want to touch that, even a drop of that. No, it's just suffering. So I just find it amazing. And I don't understand how people can have a pleasant feeling. And yeah, so it's not really the object, but it's something else. It's other factors. And in fact, this what's said in Buddhism, and it's something I'm puzzled about. I don't fully understand this, but they say that one of the ways our karma ripens, the karma we created in the past, and then, you know, that causes experiences in the present. So one of the ways our karma ripens is in terms of our feelings, the kind of feelings we have. So that is a factor in whether we have a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling with regard to different objects. Now, I feel there must be other factors besides just karma, but that's in the Buddhist teachings, and I need to investigate that more. But it's a karmic thing. So why one person loves hot chili sauce and another person can't stand it, it's due to our karma, the karma to have that experience. And then the third type of feeling is a neutral feeling, and that is said to increase ignorance. So ignorance here means not understanding the true nature of things, but seeing things as existing in a way other than how they do exist. And so that's more subtle and more difficult to understand. But yeah, anyway, I won't go into that because it takes time. But the point is that when we have just a neutral feeling, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, we just continue to see that object in a mistaken way, in an incorrect way, like thinking it's permanent when in fact it's impermanent, or thinking that it's inherently existing, independently existing, when in fact it's empty of that mode of existence. This is more subtle, more difficult. So I'll mainly focus on the first two. That's probably where most of our experiences lie. So then if we can see that attachment and anger are problematic, you know, they disturb our mind and they can lead to lots of other problems as well. If we can recognize that and we want to work on them, we want to decrease them and not increase them, then one thing we can do is work on feelings, become aware of feelings. Now, we can't stop feelings. Even a Buddha has feelings. Even someone who's fully enlightened has feelings, although they say a Buddha only has pleasant feelings, no unpleasant feelings, no neutral feelings, but just pleasant feelings all the time. But still, a Buddha has feelings. But in the mind of a Buddha, feelings would not lead to attachment, because a Buddha is free of attachment, no more attachment. But anyway, the point is, you know, we can't stop feelings from happening in our mind, but we can try to not let feelings increase our afflictions, our delusions. And that's the purpose of mindfulness, becoming mindful of feelings. And so how to practice mindfulness of feelings? So we start by just being aware, trying to be aware of our feelings. So in the sutra, the Satipatthana Sutra, the Buddha said, when feeling a pleasant feeling, one knows, I feel a pleasant feeling. When feeling an unpleasant feeling, one knows, I feel an unpleasant feeling. And when feeling a neutral feeling, one knows, I feel a neutral feeling. So it's simply paying attention to your mind and noticing the feelings that arise, and noticing if it's a pleasant or an unpleasant or a neutral one. And it's difficult to notice every single feeling that we have. There's so many of them, just constantly. But we can start with the most obvious ones. So if we have a really strong, pleasant feeling, like for example, you're meditating, and maybe somebody nearby is baking a cake. You can smell this odor of a cake. And if you like cake, yeah, maybe you don't like cake, but if you do like cake, yeah, you know, something sweet, some nice dessert. So when you notice that smell, you might be able to notice, pleasant feeling happening in your mind. So then you just notice the pleasant feeling and let it go. You don't let your mind start fantasizing and making plans, you know, of how to get a piece of that cake and eat it, and so on, whatever. You just notice it, and then you carry on with your meditation. Or maybe there's an unpleasant feeling. Maybe there's sound. There's some kind of sound, like somebody's using a chainsaw. Yeah, that's a pretty unpleasant sound. So that's just an example. But yeah, there's an unpleasant sound that starts happening, and you feel, and you notice unpleasant feeling happening in your mind with that sound. So then you just notice unpleasant feeling, and try not to pay more attention to the sound and go back to your meditation. So it's not easy to do because our mind habitually gets caught up in objects that we see or hear or smell, you know, we can make stories about them, make plans about them, have fantasies about them. That's our habitual tendency. So it's easy for that to start happening in your meditation, as you might have noticed. You may have noticed that already. But yeah, just try to be aware that that's happening and try to let go of all that, see that as a distraction, and then come back to your meditation, whatever meditation you're doing. Also, we can try to incorporate the understanding of impermanence, because feelings are impermanent, like everything else in our body and mind. Feelings happen and then disappear. They only last a moment, although we may have several moments of the same feeling, but eventually they will pass, and then another feeling will come up about another object. So this is one thing we can try to notice when we're meditating is the impermanent nature of feelings. Like I mentioned yesterday, that a time when I was eating a golden kiwi and just amazed by the delicious taste of it, but then I watched my mind and like, how long did the pleasure last? How long was there a pleasant feeling? And I could see that it was very short, very, very quickly passed, didn't last. So this is helpful. This is very helpful for our practice to recognize the temporary nature of sense objects that we experience with our senses, like tastes and smells and sounds and visions and so on. We can recognize how impermanent they are, how short-lived they are. That can really help us realize, why be attached? Why be attached to these things? They're not going to last. They're not able to give me lasting happiness and pleasure. They're very, very transient, very short term. So that will help gradually to have less attachment to them and be able to just notice them and let them go. So let's try a meditation on this just for a little while. See if we can notice our feelings. Maybe leave that on. Oh, yeah. There are some other slides afterwards. Not yet, but after the meditation. It's not so disturbing to leave that on, is it? Disturbing? No.
So we leave it on? Or
yeah, just leave it on, because otherwise it takes a while to get it on, and we just leave it on.
Always this sometimes. Either we leave it with the noise,
or we go through the whole process of starting it again. Okay, let's just leave it on. We'll just do a short meditation. Okay, so get your body into a good and comfortable position for meditation. And first of all, let's see if we can recall feelings that we had from when we first woke up this morning. And just try to remember some of the experiences you had when you woke up and after you woke up. You don't have to remember every single event, everything you did, but just see if you can recall having any strong, pleasant feelings about something, like when you had your first cup of coffee or tea, or if you had maybe an unpleasant feeling, maybe you had a backache or some other physical discomfort. Just kind of review from the beginning of the day up until now and try to recall pleasant feelings and unpleasant feelings. We won't be concerned about neutral feelings because those are more subtle. We'll mainly focus on the pleasant and unpleasant feelings. And then just let your awareness be in the present moment. Notice whatever sensations there are, hearing sounds, maybe smelling some odors, feeling sensations in your body, and so on. And see if you can notice what feelings accompany those experiences. Just try to be aware moment by moment and try to notice feelings. You may not be able to notice all of them, only the really strong ones. But if you do notice a feeling, just you can label it, pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling, and then let it go and return to just staying in the present, being aware of what's happening in your experience moment by moment. So that's just to give you an idea of how you can start to practice this type of mindfulness, of awareness of feelings. One time when I was teaching this topic, it was a course on mindfulness, the Four Establishments of Mindfulness, and I asked the people in the group how they feel about ticking clocks. You know, there's some clocks that tick and make a loud ticking noise. You know what I'm talking about? And for me personally, that is really annoying, because sometimes in a Buddhist center or in a meditation hall, they have that kind of clock. And so when you're sitting there meditating, there's this tick, 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 right?
Yeah.
And I try to get away those clocks and have silent clocks instead. But anyway, I asked the people in the group, how many people find that kind of clock annoying and unpleasant? And so, you know, some people put up their hand, and then I asked how many people don't mind, and other people put up their hand. And so that made it really clear that the sound itself, that sound of a clock ticking, itself isn't a cause of an unpleasant feeling. Because if it was, everybody would feel that way. Everybody would have an unpleasant feeling. But clearly that isn't the case. Some people don't mind, and maybe some people even enjoy it. Some people might find it a pleasant sound, comforting somehow. I don't know. Anyone here find that? You like the sound of a ticking clock? Anyone like it? You do?
Yes.
You like it?
In fact, in the Christmas, last Christmas, I he pedido un reloj. Because I wanted it. Yes.
She said, yes, indeed, for last Christmas,
Yeah.
I asked for a present, like a clock with noise, with a clicking clock.
For
Interesting.
sleep.
To sleep.
It helps you sleep. For me, it's the opposite. I can't sleep.
Yeah, but for me, the worst is the Wi-Fi in the phone for la alarma, the alarm. The Wi-Fi for me is dangerous, and the tick-tick is natural system.
Yeah, because the way she interprets this is that when you use the alarm, the mobile, because of the Wi-Fi, so she feels that this is
not healthy
somehow,
to have
and the tic-tac of the tick-tick of the clock is a natural sound. So,
interesting. Very interesting.
It's like the tic-tac of the clock. It's like when you are, I don't know,
rocking the baby. Yes.
So
yes.
you feel like
yeah.
the sound is
yes. Yes. Interesting. So that shows that it's really our mind, how our mind responds to sounds or smells or tastes, and it isn't the object itself that makes us feel that way, but it's mainly our mind. Yeah. And it's also possible to work on the mind and change the mind so that we don't get annoyed by certain sounds, have aversion for them, and maybe even come to like them, or at least have a neutral feeling so that we're not irritated. Yeah. And so to talk a bit about other types of feelings. So in the sutra, the Satipatthana Sutra, the Buddha goes on to talk about another category, two categories of feelings. One are worldly feelings, and the other are unworldly feelings. And so worldly feelings come about when we perceive sense objects, like things we see, smell, taste, and so on, our five senses. So any feelings we have with our five senses are worldly feelings. And then unworldly or spiritual, another way of calling it is spiritual feelings. Spiritual feelings arise when we practice the Dharma and make our minds more in accordance with the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings or the spiritual teachings. So I think worldly feelings are, as we explained before, any feeling arising from hearing a sound or smelling an odor, seeing an object, and they can be pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. Yeah, so that's what we already looked at. And then spiritual feelings. So there can be, again, unpleasant, pleasant, and neutral spiritual feelings. So an example of an unpleasant feeling that is spiritual would be a feeling of sadness that arises when we are contemplating a topic like impermanence or death. So these are topics that the Buddha advised us to meditate on, and they can be very powerful meditations to help us overcome attachment and also take greater interest in spiritual practice. When you realize we're going to die, and we don't want to die with a mind that's full of delusions. We want to die with a peaceful mind, and therefore we really need to learn and practice the Dharma, spiritual teaching, so we can have a more positive state of mind at the time of death. So there's a lot of benefit in meditating on impermanence and death. But initially, when we first do these meditations, if we've never thought about them before, then our mind might feel kind of depressed. This is very common, right? To feel some depression when you start thinking about how everything is subject to change and everyone has to die, including yourself and your loved ones, and so on and so forth. So usually people don't feel happy, don't feel good about that, right? It's unpleasant. But that kind of unpleasant feeling is actually positive, because it will inspire us to engage in Dharma practice, to be able to live a better life, live in a way that's more wise and skillful and compassionate. So it incites us to engage in a spiritual path, spiritual practice. So because it leads to something beneficial, something good for ourselves and also for others, then it's considered a spiritual feeling, even though it's unpleasant. Initially it's unpleasant, but it's not a bad feeling to have. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is useful to know, because when people first take an interest in meditation, they may have this idea that, oh, I want to meditate to feel good, to feel happy. Meditation should be about beautiful things like love, joy, peace, beautiful things. So they have this idea that whenever they practice meditation, they should feel good. Yeah, meditation should make us feel good. Yeah, and maybe also this idea is supported by advertising. I don't know how it is in Spain, but like I say, in America, there are like magazines, mindfulness magazines. And sometimes on the cover of these magazines, they'll have a photo of a person, usually an attractive young woman or man, and they're sitting on the grass, looking like a very beautiful location. They're sitting there, perfect posture. They're probably a yoga practitioner as well. Perfect posture, and on their face, there's this expression of joy and peace and happiness. Yeah, have you seen those kind of photos? Also in yoga magazines, yoga journals, they also have those kind of photos. Yeah. So this is kind of giving us the idea that meditation is about feeling good, right? Feeling good and looking good, of course. Feeling good and looking good. So then we may have that expectation that if we practice meditation, we are going to look like that. We're going to feel like that. We're going to have good feelings, right? So from the Buddhist point of view, this is not realistic. Yeah, meditation can be quite difficult, challenging, and sometimes unpleasant feelings can arise, can occur. But that's not a bad thing. It's not wrong. Because we have to face our mind. We have to face our delusions. There's a lot of delusions in our mind. And we need to be willing to look at those and face those and work on them, work through them. But we first have to recognize them. So that can be an unpleasant experience, like the young woman mentioned yesterday when she sees anger. She notices anger in her mind. Then she gets kind of stressed. I don't know the whole story behind that, but I think this is a common experience. When we face our mind and we see what's going on in our mind, it isn't such a pleasant, something pleasant like that. But that is what we need to do. We need to see what's really going on in our mind so that we can then clean it up, work on it. And in fact, they use this analogy in the Buddhist scriptures of washing clothes. Like if you have really dirty clothes, and maybe you don't have a washing machine, but you have to wash them by hand. So you have a bucket with soapy water. You put your clothes in the bucket, and before you put your clothes in, the water might be quite clean and clear. You put your dirty clothes in, and what happens to the water? It gets really gray and dirty and ugly. And so, but that's what needs to happen. You want the dirt to come out of your clothes. And so you have to look at the dirt in the water. And then you wash your clothes, and eventually they're clean and the water is clean too. But yeah, so it's kind of similar with our mind. Yeah, when we start working on our mind, start practicing meditation, it's like, oh, we see all this dirt, all this unpleasant things in our mind, that we need to see those things so that we know what our mind is like and what kind of work we need to do on our mind. So yeah, any sort of unpleasant feelings we may have when we face our mind, the reality of our mind, or when we contemplate the Dharma and face the truth, the true nature of things, if we feel unpleasant about that, well, that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. And also eventually, like, in the beginning, we may have an unpleasant feeling when we contemplate impermanence and death. But if we keep meditating on that and working with that, eventually we stop having such unpleasant feelings. And we may even have a pleasant feeling. We may feel, yeah, this is the true nature of things. And I'm really glad that I have the chance to look at the true nature of things and accept the true nature of things. And this will help me to live my life in a better way, to act in a better way. And so eventually we can get beyond the unpleasant feelings. So does that make sense? That, yeah, having an unpleasant feeling when you meditate isn't necessarily a bad thing. And meditation isn't only about feeling good and having pleasant feelings. But sometimes it does happen when we meditate that we have a pleasant feeling. So that's the second type of of a spiritual feeling, a pleasant feeling. So an example would be if we meditate on loving kindness. Okay, that's a really beautiful, positive state of mind. We generate the feeling of love, and then we imagine extending that feeling to more and more people and living beings. And so when we do that, there's a pleasant feeling. It's just naturally pleasant to have feelings of loving kindness for others. So that's one example of a pleasant spiritual feeling. So it's a feeling that isn't related to eating delicious food or listening to beautiful music. It's related to cultivating a really positive, virtuous state of mind. And so it's a spiritual feeling, spiritual pleasant feeling. And then there's also neutral feelings that are spiritual. This is more hard to understand. It's more when your mind reaches a higher level of concentration. If you're really working on developing concentration at higher levels of concentration, it's said that you go beyond pleasant feelings and you have what's called equanimity. It's a certain kind of equanimity, which is, a feeling that arises from concentration, which is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It's just a very kind of calm and soothing, balanced state of mind. So that's probably most of us haven't got to that point, but it is, a spiritual, neutral feeling. So that's another aspect of feelings, that there are feelings that are worldly, just related to our sensory experiences, and then there are feelings that are spiritual, related to our spiritual practice. So we have very limited time. I don't have time to go into everything else, but I thought to just briefly mention the last two of the four mindfulnesses. So the next slide is about the third one, mindfulness of the mind. And so when it comes to mind, what is the mind that we are practicing mindfulness of? There are different explanations according to the Theravada tradition and also the Mahayana tradition. So this gets very complex, and yeah, in the Theravada tradition particularly, there are 8 pairs of minds or mental states that you learn about and pay attention to. So it's quite complex. I won't go into it all. One example is a mind with attachment and a mind without attachment. So you train yourself to notice if your state of mind has attachment together with it, or if it's not, if it's free of attachment. So that's just one example, but there's many others of these, and like I say, it's complicated. And then in our tradition, a Tibetan tradition, a Mahayana tradition, there are three ways to practice mindfulness of the mind. One is to be mindful of the impermanence of the mind. So that would be just noticing how the mind is changing, and it's not exactly the same moment by moment by moment, but it's constantly changing in every moment. So that helps us understand that, yeah, mind is impermanent. It's us understand impermanence. And then the second is mindfulness of the conventional nature of the mind, meaning what is the mind? What exactly is the mind? And it's said to be clear and knowing. The nature of the mind is that it's clear, and the meaning of clear is that it's non-physical. It's not made of any physical materials like cells, molecules, atoms. There's no physical properties at all. It's completely non-physical, non-material. And then knowing refers to the function of the mind, what the mind does. So what the mind does is that it knows, meaning it's aware. It simply has awareness of things. So that's the function of the mind, that it knows objects. It's aware of objects. So that's the nature of the mind. And so there's mindfulness that is able to be aware of the nature of the mind, the clear and knowing nature of the mind. But this is actually quite difficult to do, because most of the time our mind is engaged with thoughts and sensory experiences. So our mind is looking at things outside of itself, paying attention to things out there. And it's very difficult to see the nature of the mind itself, that which it knows, that which thinks, that which perceives. Yeah, so it's hard, and it said that you have to be able to really calm down your mind, train your mind so that it isn't chasing after thoughts and perceptions, and even the Dalai Lama has said that one time he was in retreat. He was doing a retreat in Ladakh, which is way up in the Himalayas, the Indian side of the Himalayas. And the people there practice Tibetan Buddhism. So he was there and he was in a retreat. So it was probably very quiet, very peaceful, very far away from, you know, a lot of activities. And during that retreat, he was able to recognize the clear and knowing nature of the mind. But then he says that when he came out of retreat and returned to his normal life, he has a very busy life, as you can imagine. So many people wanting to meet the Dalai Lama and asking him for teaching and so on. He has a very busy life. So then he wasn't able to retain that experience of seeing the nature of the mind. So that kind of shows how difficult it is to actually perceive that. Not impossible, but difficult. And then the third one is even more difficult. This is mindfulness of the emptiness of the I, the self. Okay? So, we already talked a little bit about that and how we tend to have a feeling like there's a real I inside of us that is the director, the CEO of all operations in our body and mind. It's making decisions and, telling our body and mind what to do. So it seems like there's an I in there that plays that role. But most of the time, most people never even question that or look for that. And Buddhism says if we do try to find that I, then we won't be able to find it. We can't find it in our body. We can't point to any part of our body, like our nose or even our brain. No part of our body is that I. And also in our mind, no part of our mind is that kind of I. So this is something you discover by investigating your own experience. You don't find that I. And so then that leads to this realization of the emptiness of the I, the non-existence, the absence of such an I. And so then if you do have that experience, that ability to understand the emptiness of the I, then you can be mindful of that, mindful of the emptiness of the I. So this is another practice that comes under mindfulness of the mind. Then the next slide is the fourth type of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of phenomena. And usually phenomena means anything that exists, anything that, is there. And again, there are different ways of explaining this particular type of mindfulness. In the Pali tradition, that's the tradition you find in Southeast Asia, this involves mindfulness of 5 sets of phenomena, 5 groups of phenomena. And these are the 5 obstacles. These are mental states that are obstacles to developing concentration. One of them is desire, particularly desire for sense objects, desire for pleasant sights and sounds and smells and tastes and bodily feelings. So that kind of desire is one of the main obstacles to developing concentration. So there's others as well, but there are 5 hindrances that you need to be aware of in order to overcome. And then 5 aggregates. This is this is a way of talking about our body and mind combination. So the Buddha explained, I think it was already existing in India at the time. It was already an Indian philosophy talking about 5 aggregates. Basically, it's just body and mind. It's a way of talking about the body and mind in a, more expanded way. So so developing mindfulness of the 5 aggregates, and then 12 sources. Yeah, I won't. We don't have time to go into these, but these are other things in Buddhist philosophy, in the Buddhist scriptures. 12 sources, 7 awakening factors, and the 4 noble truths. That's something we already encountered. So anyway, it's complicated in the Pali tradition. You learn about all these different kinds of phenomena and then practice mindfulness of them. And then in our tradition, this is a little less complicated. According to Lama Tsongkhapa, the founder of our tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, the Gelug tradition, he says that the main phenomena to be mindful of are 2. Just 2 things. First is the things that are to be abandoned, and those are delusions, okay? Like anger, like the little face on the bottom, angry face. So just being aware of delusions in our mind that we need to abandon, we need to overcome, we need to eliminate. Then the second are things that are to be developed, and those are the good qualities, positive qualities, such as love and loving feelings and compassion. Those are examples of beneficial qualities. So that's a simpler way of explaining this 4th type of mindfulness. Learning about what are the negative things we want to overcome and free ourselves from, and what are the positive things that we want to cultivate and have more of. And then being mindful of those within ourself, within our experience, and then working on increasing the good qualities and decreasing the negative. I think there might be one more slide, like a summary. Yeah. Okay, so here's a summary of some of the main points of this topic. So the purpose of these 4 establishments of mindfulness is to gain direct insight into the nature of our body and our mind, and then use this insight to eliminate the mental afflictions that keep us stuck in samsara, that keep us stuck in a unsatisfactory situation where we experience problems, dukkha, again and again and again. So that's the real purpose, is to free ourselves from suffering by freeing ourselves from the causes of suffering. And the causes of suffering are within ourselves, within our own mind mainly. So we have to recognize those so that we can eliminate them. That's the real purpose of these 4. And then the Dalai Lama says that by practicing them, our positive qualities will grow, and correct understanding will increase in power, so that liberation and awakening will become not only an aspiration, but a reality. I think that's nice words to end with. Conclusion. And yeah, we haven't had the time to go into all of these in detail, but if you are interested in this subject, this book In English, it's called Following in the Buddha's Footsteps, and that's the Spanish name. And there might be copies of that in the bookshop here, I don't know. But you can also get it online. And yeah, so in that book, it explains a lot of other topics. In fact, it contains an explanation of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the three jewels that we take refuge in as Buddhists. So there's a very extensive explanation of all the good qualities of those three jewels, three objects of refuge. And then it also contains a good explanation of the three higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So there, you know, if you're interested in concentration, there's an explanation on how to develop concentration. And then with regard to that third higher training of wisdom, then it goes into the explanation of the 37 harmonies with enlightenment. And these 4 establishments of mindfulness are the first 4 of the 37 harmonies. So there's a lot of very interesting and valuable information in that book, and it's not easy to find that kind of information in other books. So I really recommend it. It's difficult, it's complicated, but if you really want to know more about Buddhism and the Buddhist path, Buddhist practice, then that it's a very good resource. So, yeah, as you can see, you know, this topic isn't so easy. It's quite complicated. And you may feel, oh, I don't know how I can practice this. But I hope that, you know, at least you see the value in doing like the first kind of practice in this topic, which is meditation on the breath, and just learning to pay attention to the breath and letting your body and mind calm down and focus on the breath. So that practice brings a lot of benefit just here and now, just in our present life. It's a very, very helpful practice to do. So even just to, you know, do that first practice, try to do it on a regular basis if you can. That will bring you a lot of benefit. And then also, but not everybody finds it easy to meditate. Not everybody has the ability to, you know, sit down and do meditation on their own. Some people find that quite challenging. But that's not the only kind of practice that there is. Yeah, so if you do have difficulty meditating, there are other ways of engaging in spiritual practice. For example, living ethically. And in Buddhism, ethics mainly means trying to avoid harmful actions to others. So just having the awareness that nobody wants to suffer, nobody wants to be harmed, just like we do. Yeah, we don't like it when someone is harmful to us. So extending that to others, and then trying to respect that, trying to respect others, and not do anything that would make them unhappy or make them suffer. So that's not so difficult to understand. And also it's pretty much the same in all religions, all spiritual traditions. They all have that idea of, you know, don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. Like Jesus said something about that, right? But that idea exists in all religions, all spiritual traditions, that we treat others the way we want to be treated. That's kind of like the bottom line. And so, yeah, just trying to live your life in that way. That itself is like spiritual practice, and that itself is a good way to live your life. It will benefit yourself, and it will also benefit others. You'll be happier, and you'll get along better with others. You won't have as many problems. So that, I think that's not too difficult to practice. Yeah. So even if you can't meditate, it's hard to sit still and keep your mind still, then that's something you can do in your daily life. And also doing more than that, if you can do more than just not harming others, but helping others. If you understand, others, want to be helped and are happy when you can help them. So when you become aware that someone is in need, most people do this anyway, yeah? Your neighbor is sick and can't go to the supermarket. So, you offer to go shopping for them or cooking for them, okay? This is kind of just, common sense and something we already do. But maybe you can find more opportunities to do that, more ways that you can do that. Just keeping your eyes and your ears open and noticing when some person or some being is in need of help. And then if you can, maybe we can't always help others, but when you can help others, then doing that. So that's also like a spiritual practice that will bring benefit to yourself and also to others. So again, even if you have difficulty meditating, there are other things you can do that will bring benefit to yourself and others. And also keep coming back for more courses. Yeah. Doing one course alone usually isn't enough to learn everything we need to know to bring spiritual teachings into our life. So it's good to come back, learn more, increase your knowledge, increase your experience, and also maintain connection with the spiritual friends. Spiritual friends are really important because most, like among our family and neighbors and people around us, probably not many are really interested in doing things like meditation and spiritual practice. So we may feel quite alone, and then it's hard to keep practicing when we're on our own. But when you have spiritual friends who are interested in the same things, trying to do the same things, then that gives you support. Yeah, you feel not so alone, you feel supported. And it becomes easier to practice when you do it with others. So that's really helpful too. Okay, we have a few minutes left. If there's any last questions that you want to ask?
Bueno, primero de todo, muchas gracias por todo lo que nos has compartido, por los aprendizajes. Me digo, una experiencia súper enriquecedora. Y tenía dos preguntas.
One at a time. My memory isn't that good.
La primera tiene que ver con el desapego, que es un tema que llevo reflexionando y meditando hace mucho tiempo sobre él, a raíz de las muertes cercanas. Es un tema que le he dado muchas vueltas. Y mi pregunta es, ¿cómo practicar el desapego de las personas, ¿no? De las cosas, pero sobre todo de las personas también sin perder la ilusión, ¿no? A veces entendemos como el desapego como desilusión, no sé. A veces creo que el desapego me lleva a perder ilusión por las cosas.
The first question will be regarding non-attachment. She has been reflecting on this subject for a while, so related with the passing away of some close people. So how to put into practice non-attachment regarding people, regarding persons that we love. So how not to feel attached, but at the same time not to lose the closeness or the feeling for the person, because sometimes it's difficult to manage.
Yes, very difficult. Very, very challenging to do. Usually what's recommended is impermanence, to just contemplate impermanence, just how that is the nature of everyone and everything. And, like I say, initially we may feel some unhappiness about that, but eventually we realize, well, that's how things are, and it's best to accept it. And so our mind gradually becomes more familiar, more accepting of impermanence. And we can think specifically about people. Even though it's painful to think this way, but if we get familiar with this reality, then gradually we become more accepting of it. And so, so just to contemplate that, yes, all these people in my life, people I'm close to, they are not going to last forever. They are going to pass away at some point. And so then that will help us be prepared when, for when they do pass away, and not be so shocked and so upset about that. But we can, at the same time, we can still love them, cherish them, take care of them, be kind to them, but just with that understanding that they're not going to be there forever. And in fact, if we have this awareness of impermanence, in a way that will help the relationship, because then we won't take them for granted. We won't. That can happen sometimes in relationships, like if you feel, oh, that person is going to be there forever, so we don't have to be so kind to them, and so, but if we realize, well, they're not going to be there forever, then it's like we really value them. And I mean, we hopefully do that without attachment, but just really cherish the time we have together, realizing that it's limited. I really felt that strongly when I was with my mother at the last few weeks of her life. There was this knowledge that she was going to disappear very soon. And of course it brought up a lot of attachment, but it also brought up a lot of love, a lot of just, wow, she is so precious. And I really want to take care of her, want to do what I can with her, want to show my love for her. So awareness of impermanence can really help our love and our compassion. And the tricky thing is trying to do that without attachment. So it's a balancing act, like on a tightrope, So it's not easy, but that's one of the best antidotes for attachment.
La segunda pregunta tiene que ver con que, yo soy madre de dos niños, uno adolescente y otro preadolescente, y mientras han sido pequeños he intentado hablarles mucho de estos temas, pero ahora que están en la adolescencia es difícil. Creo que tenemos muchas influencias externas de las redes sociales, de la sociedad occidental en general, y es complicado acercarles a ciertos temas más espirituales, sobre crecimiento personal. Y la pregunta es hasta qué punto se puede forzar o es mejor dejar y que el proceso natural de madurez sea el que les acerque a estos temas. ¿O qué consejo das para la crianza, ¿no?
The second question is regarding, I have two kids, teenagers, and when they were smaller, younger, I used to try to talk with them about this kind of things, this sort of spiritual stuff and how to become a better person and this kind of stuff. But now when they are in a very difficult time as a teenagers and with a lot of influence from social media and the society in general. So what would be your advice in regarding how much do we need to sort of to push, you know, to really try at some point to force our values or criteria about how to become a better person, to have proper values, or should we just, let's say, okay, let's rely on that at some point they will become mature enough to have their own criteria. And so what would be any advice from your side about how to behave in this regard?
Well, I'm not a parent. I don't have the experience of being a parent, and yeah, I think it is very, very difficult, very challenging, and I don't think it's right to push or force. In fact, if you try to do that, it'll probably be counterproductive. They'll probably just push back and not do. You know, I think most of us go through that experience when we're teenagers of being rebellious. Yeah, rebellious. And it's just part of life, you know, finding our own way, becoming more independent of our parents. So I don't think that is a good idea. But it also wouldn't be good to just be completely loose and let your kids do everything. Because if they're still young and you're still responsible for them, then you do need to have guidance over what they do and what they don't do. So, yeah, if they are doing something or they're going in a direction that is wrong, like taking drugs or hanging out with other kids who have a bad influence on them, then I think it's important to, you know, say something about that and not just turn away and do nothing. But yeah, parent-child relationships are very, very complex. And like I say, I don't have the experience, so I can't really speak from experience. The other day I was visiting a friend who has a son who's just becoming 16 years old, and she's a single mother, so she's the main person responsible for the child. And yeah, she talked about difficulties they have, and I asked, do you have arguments sometimes? And she said, all the time. But they're not like angry and violent. They're just discussions. And, you know, she wants him to do certain things. He has other ideas and so on. So they discuss. And I'm not sure exactly how she discusses with them. I didn't observe that. But yeah, she's clearly very firm with her son and not letting him do just everything he wants, but she's trying to show that she's concerned for his health and his well-being. And I can't help but feel that if he can understand that, if he can appreciate that, then he will listen and follow along. But that's just a very general. Yeah, and each situation is different as well. Each child is different, each relationship is different. So it very much depends on, your particular relationship with your children. But maybe it's better if you ask other people than myself, because they probably have more experience than me. Yeah.
But exist teenagers that are making meditation. Los quinceañeros meditan. Tienen el afán de meditar. Un adolescente puede tener esa motivación de meditar.
Do you think a teenager could have the inclination to
Yes.
meditate?
Oh, yes, definitely. There are some.
Yo sí puedo aportar, si quieres, luego hablando, tengo 2 hijos de 28 y 29.
can grow.
Y lo que vi que podía hacer era ayudarles a entender el mundo en que estaban viviendo, los valores que estaban predominando, y que fueran conscientes de que no era la única manera de vivir y de interpretar el mundo.
Her job was to try to help them to understand the world they were in, the values that prevail in the world, so they could kind of choose what to follow, what to do, which things to consider and which other stuff should be abandoned, like to help them to understand, like, yeah, the world, the situation they were in.
Y hablar con ellos de cómo ellos vivían toda esta vorágine, sobre todo de las redes sociales, poner el acento en el ego, en el aspecto, cómo les afectaba a ellos y cómo podía afectar a sus compañeros, de manera que fueran observadores de eso, y luego que ellos tomaran sus decisiones, pero que no intentaran no verse atrapados, como intentar ayudarles a entender. Sí, pienso que hay que hablarles como adultos, porque ellos viven y sufren esa realidad. Entonces, ayudarles a interpretar, ya está, pero sin imponer una visión. Porque cuando si impones algo, lo natural es el rechazo para la autodefinición y la autopercepción. Pero sí que necesitan más que nunca ahora, pienso, entender en qué mundo están viviendo y que hay unos objetivos muy claros para que ellos vivan y se experimenten a sí mismos de una manera concreta, que es para que compren, para que necesiten lo externo. Si tú les ayudas a interpretar eso con reflexiones relajadas en la comida o algún caso concreto de la escuela, es una oportunidad para incidir en esos valores que tú de pequeños les has transmitido ya y que ya tienen, y que ese fundamento está con lo que tú has expresado con ellos cuando eran pequeños. Esa es mi experiencia y de momento veo que ha funcionado así, que son críticos y están atentos a esas cosas. Y tu ejemplo de vida es lo mejor que pueden tener, más que las palabras.
In their 20s or even their late 20s, they like the kind of people they became. So far, so good.
Yeah. And I always think too that if we want to influence others or help others, that it's best to be a good example, be an example of, like that famous saying, be the change you want to see in the world. So if we want others to change, then we need to embody that way of being. And if we can be a good example of what we hope for others, then it's not definite that they will change, but there's a greater possibility that they will change and follow that example. But if we say one thing and then act another way, then they see that as hypocritical and, not going to pay attention. So I think that's really important, is to, be an example, a role model. So I hope that this course has been helpful for you and you've learned something and you will be able to continue practicing at least some of what you learned, and that it will continue to benefit you in your life and benefit the people around you as well. I really do believe that when we work on ourselves and put the teachings into practice, put the Dharma into practice, that it does benefit others, even if it's not so obvious at the beginning, but slowly, the good energy will spread to others. So let's do a final dedication of the merit, the positive energy we've created during this weekend. Going back to the theme of altruism, thinking about others wanting to benefit others as much as possible, understanding that they want to be happy just like us. They don't want suffering, problems, difficulties, just like we do. And wishing, praying, dedicating the good energy we have created, we have generated, sharing that with others, wishing that it will benefit them, bring them peace and happiness, help them to recognize the causes of suffering within their mind and change their minds so that they have greater positive qualities like love and compassion, and decrease the disturbing qualities like anger and attachment and self-centeredness. And may this positive energy ultimately help us all to reach the state of enlightenment, the state of awakening.